Okay, so hopefully you've now had a look at the questions 1, 2 and moved on to number 3 on page 142. And that should mean that you've read through those 3 fairly short texts and maybe jotted down some notes for questions 1 and 2 that you can refer to perhaps in class. If you've not reached that point, pause the video and come back in a moment. Okay, so in question 3, you should now have your answers in front of you for question 3. We have 2 questions for each of the texts, and this is just like part of the reading paper that you'll get in the CAE. So, as we've come across these before, one of the big difficulties that people have is not so much picking the right answer as discarding the wrong ones. And that's very much the case in most, if not all, of the questions that we're looking at today. And in the first text then, about the futuro house, or the futuro house perhaps, there are 2 questions. In the first paragraph, the writer suggests that when developing the futuro, matti suronen, and then we have to decide A, B, C or D. Okay, the answer is D, and the reason for this is that on line 9, it talks about a much more, or how the architect had a much more intuitive approach. In answer A, was keen to keep the design a secret. That's not mentioned at all. B and C, to me these look to be testing whether you're projecting your own conclusions onto the situation rather than understanding what the writer actually says. And I think this is something which in this part of the CAE exam, or in comprehension in general at CAE level, the trap to avoid falling into is exactly that. It's understanding the difference between your projected conclusions and what you can read as implied, which is what makes this so difficult, by the writer. So the difference is, what are you projecting onto the situation, or what is the writer implying in what they say? And there's a very fine line. I'm aware that that's the difficulty that many of you will come across. In question 2, what does the writer find strange about attitudes towards the futuro today? And the answer is A. People still think that it looks like a futuristic object. On line 28, we read, what is intriguing about the futuro is that 40 years on, we still see this object as futuristic. Why are the others wrong is obviously the question now going through your mind. On line 31, somewhat questionable is not the same as fail to see, which is what B suggests. That people fail to see that the design was ahead of its time. C is wrong because the article implies that people see it as both artistic and practical, and I don't think that D is mentioned at all, although we, the readers, might imagine that it's true that people in various parts of the world are keen to preserve them. That doesn't come up at all in the text.